So hello everyone, welcome back to our weekly podcast. There was a lot going on in the past few weeks, in the past 10 to 14 days. We had the killing of the one George Floyd. It has taken the US, the world by storm, and what followed the brutal killing was nationwide and worldwide protests taking taking shape everywhere in the world. Uh, the incident happened in Minneapolis, in the US, and we have had protests across the US. We have had protests spread, as far as Britain, Canada, name it, Mexico, name it. Yeah. So the killing of George Floyd brought about a debate that has for long been, in the public public eye. It is something that we have been talking about for a number of times, and it brought about the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything. So most of these protests have been dominated by Black Lives Matter. We have had Blackout Tuesday, that was last week, where most of these prominent social media accounts were putting the black square. We have had a number of things. Uh, so basically, today I just want to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement because it is what is headlining the the social agenda in terms of what is happening and what is being talked about. And like I said, this followed the brutal killing of George Floyd. It is something that we need to examine and debate about and discuss whether it is relevant, what are the motives, how best it's going to help us, and everything. So first and foremost, I just want to put this on record. Um, on social media and everywhere, from what I've seen, I not a staunch support of Black Lives Movement and Black Lives Matter movement and everything that I've been seeing in connection to what they have been talking about, what they have been advocating for, what their you know what their agenda is. I'm not in support of Black Lives Matter. I'm not in support of Black Lives Matter movement and everything connected to that. However, let me put this on record. I believe some of the concerns they are bringing forward are genuine, and we are going to be looking into that. So, our first issue we are going to be talking about will be the Black Lives Matter movement. We have been to seeing it. It has been trending on Twitter. It has been trending on Facebook, almost all the social media platforms. But we need to critically examine what Black Lives Matter is all about, because it is good uttering it and without knowing what it's all about. So I've done some research about this Black Lives Matter movement. I've visited their website, and right from their website, this is what they believe in. Uh, it starts like this: 4 years ago, what was what is now known as the Black Lives Matter Global Network began to organize. It started out as a chapter-based member-led organization whose mission was to build local power and to intervene when violence was inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. In the years since, we've committed to struggling together and to imagining and creating a world free of anti-blackness, and where every black person has the social, economic, and political power to thrive. Now, basing on what they believe in, I personally, like, at that very instant, I had very many problems with that already, because first and foremost, I have a problem with them believing that black lives start mattering only when injustices, injustices are inflicted upon them by either the state or vigilantes. So I have that problem because we are having very many injustices between blacks, and according to Black Lives Matter Global Network, that is none of their business. So, secondly, they talk about political and economic power thrive, but I've not actually seen Black Lives Matter being so outspoken, being so relevant, being so, coming out on issues, on economic issues and political issues. It only comes out on social issues. I don't know whether it is a strategy for them to remain relevant in the public eye. I don't know, but I think there is a lot of hypocrisy on that, because if you believe that what makes you relevant are only social issues, then you're actually not transforming Black lives. But again, moving on, when I visited the websites, I was taken aback by the defund the police movement that they have started, or I think it's activism to defund the police. This is in the US, and they basically they just want to defund the police, and in some cases they are calling for dismantling of police. However, I have two problems with that. First and foremost, they don't offer an alternative to defunding police. If you don't want police, what do you want? Because Black communities have the highest crime rates. So if you want to defund the police and not equip them, then you need to offer an alternative, which they are not doing. Then secondly, this issue of defunding the police has come up basically because of the brutal murder of George Floyd. But I think this is one of the most stupid and nonsensical ideas that I've had since the death of George Floyd. This is because when you look at the 8 point something minute video of the killing of George Floyd, you'll notice this in relation to the defund police activism. First and foremost, there is no connection. There is utterly no connection between the way George Floyd died and the funds that go into police. That is a fact. So, if you defund the police, you cannot give us a guarantee that you won't have more George Floyds dying that way. Like, there is no guarantee, because the way he died was a rogue cop putting his knee on his neck and ignoring calls from people around about his brutal handling of the suspect. So this is no way connected to funds given to police, because the funds being given to police are, mainly to equip them as they are going into the field, giving them, allowances, equipment, that is guns and everything. Yeah, so with George Floyd's killing, I don't think defining the police will do any good. It's just a political, a political slogan that is being used by the left. Then thirdly, uh, I just want to put this on record, or to make this clear, that the Black Lives Matter movement brings about genuine concerns that Black people are facing, and I'm going to be talking that in my last segment. Now, secondly or thirdly, we are having issues that are being raised by the Black Lives Matter on Global Network on their website, and I just want to tackle them one by one. Now, first and foremost, they call for violence. They are fighting against violence being put against blacks, which is genuine, which is okay, which I would very much want to be part of, to fight, not only in the US but everywhere, because it's a global network. So, but I have problems with this whole idea of violence uh, against blacks movement. Like I earlier said, from what they believe in. If you believe that you're fighting violence against blacks, then the whole idea should be to eliminate violence. So keeping quiet against violence between blacks is, like I said, it's stupid. It shows a lot of hypocrisy, because if you fight violence, then you need to fight violence as a whole. So that doesn't mean that the few cases, and I repeat, there are very few cases, because for the whole part of last year, that was 2019, there were only 9 police killings where there were unarmed black men. Nine in total in the whole year. Those are cases which you can relate to the one of George Floyd. So if you want to fight violence against blacks, then I think you should go ahead and address the issue of violence between black people, because we are having very many gun-related killings between blacks, and they have skyrocketed. They are very high. They are higher than the annual gun killings in the United States and even around the world. So I think this whole hypocrisy of pretending that the bigger problem is between white people killing blacks and neglecting the bigger and more threatening problem, which is black violence between black people, is just stupid. So if you are to eliminate the issue of violence, we need to eliminate it as a whole, because we are having black people killing themselves 3 times more than a white person can kill a black person. So you can see the extent of that problem. Then secondly, we are having, they talk about the issue of systematic racism and everything like that. And I believe this is a myth, in my own opinion. I believe the issue of systematic racism is a complete myth. It is something that doesn't exist. However, I just want to put this on record. We have had systematic racism before. And to give you a basic definition of systematic racism, is racism expressed in the practice of social and political institutions. So if you really believe that there is systematic racism, not only in the US, but even in other parts of the world, then you need to bring up that particular policy which you believe is racist, because racism by definition is anything is being discriminated basing on your skin color. So if there is any policy which is either being implemented by an institution or either political party or any other institution that you believe is being discriminatory basing on race, then you need to bring up that particular policy and make people understand that that particular policy is discriminatory basing on race. Then we fight it together. But this whole issue of chanting, institutional racism, when actually there is no concrete evidence of a policy, I repeat, a policy which is adopted by an institution, either political or social, that targets people by race, then I think it's a myth, but it's only being made relevant by the radical far left because of political motivations. And like I said, if and there's this whole issue that always comes up of people using disparities in society, mainly regarding to wealth, income, criminal justice, employment, housing, welfare, and political power, as well as education, to justify the issue of institutional racism. Like I said, this is the stupid way people tend to bring up such statistics in order to justify institutional racism. However, I don't believe it really justifies institutional racism, because if your policy, we live in a competitive world, we live in a world where, you know, they only require the best people. The best people will take the jobs, they will take the opportunities. So if there are other background problems which we need to solve that are stopping a higher number of, let's say, blacks from getting opportunities in areas that I've talked about, which are currently being used by the left to justify institutional racism, then we need to solve those original problems rather than coming out and shouting institutional racism. I'll give you an example. Uh, for example, if it's income, if black people, if more black people have less income compared to white people, that does not justify institutional racism, unless you can attribute it to a legislation, or you can attribute it to uh, a government policy that is being adopted that is directly leading to that. But if it's a social issue, which I'm going to talk about, then that is not institutional racism. So how do we fight this myth? First and foremost, we need to focus on the background original problems, which they are being which are being used to justify this myth. First and foremost, we need to focus on education. If we are having very many black people, mainly in the US and other European countries, even in Africa, where black people are more likely to drop out of school, or they are more likely not to access education institutions or education services. So I think that is the first problem we need to address, such that we can have a higher number of skilled people entering into the job market. If you're not going to solve that problem and you find that, you know, there are lower people being employed and therefore lower incomes and therefore lower wealth among black people, that is not institutional racism. There is a background problem which you're ignoring that is leading to that false statistic. That statistic you're falsely using to justify institutional racism. So, like I said, let's focus on changing the mentality mainly among black communities. Black communities are having this mentality being drummed into their heads, this so-called propaganda that they think that the reason as to why their high poverty rates is because of white supremacy and everything and white privilege. Like I said, there's nothing like white privilege. We're living in we are living in a capitalistic competitive world. You need to meet up with the standards, and trust me, we are having very many black people who have gone into that competitive world, met the standards, and they have succeeded. So you cannot claim that this so-called this myth of systematic racism was dumb enough to allow those people to thrive. We need to change our mentality. We need to accept the competitiveness of the world. We need to accept the demands of the fast changing competitive world, and we need to meet them. And this is the mentality we need to change among the black community. Then secondly, we need to change the social setting. We're having black communities mainly impacted by drugs. We're having black communities having a problem of guns. Like I said, people are killing themselves, people are taking drugs, and you cannot expect a community which is mainly being infiltrated by drugs to have more people being meaningful in society. That is just, it's just stupid. So if we can change the social setting among black communities, reduce the problem of drugs in black communities, then focus these people into more meaningful activities, talk about education, entrepreneurship, helping those people start up small businesses, helping those people acquire economic and business skills, then we are channeling this energy among black communities into more meaningful activities. And what are you going to have in the end? You're going to have increased wealth representation from black people. You're going to have increased income from black people. You're going to have a more just criminal justice system, because you're going to be having lower lower you know you're going to have lower rates of black people committing crime. You're going to have higher levels of employment from the black community, because more people will be able to possess the skills being required by the job market. You're going to have better housing for black people, because their incomes will have increased and they'll be able to afford. You're going to have better health care for black people, because they'll be able to, you know, to access the health services, because they're in a better financial and social position to access better health care. You're going to have more political uh, representation from black people, because they are educated, they are more meaningful in society, and this is the trend we need to look at. We need to not neglect the regional problems in society. Now, moving on to the other claim that the Black Lives Matter Global Network has been talking about, uh, we are having the issue of police brutality and killings, and it is something that I'm going to also spend my time on, because it has sparked of the current wave of the Black Lives Matter, activism that we are experiencing in the past 2 weeks. So, with the killing of George Floyd, which is totally, I think, people from across the political spectrum and from all walks of life and politics and everything have all come to a common ground and are accepting that actually the killing of George Floyd was unjustified. The raw cop, was uh, was on the wrong side of the law. What he did was gruesome. It was an act of injustice. It was murder. It was, yeah, you can call it, but at least we agree that it shouldn't have happened to him. So this brings me to the issue of police brutality and killing. So what has Black Lives Matter movement used this opportunity to do for its own benefit? First and foremost, they are spreading this narrative that because of an issue like what happened to George Floyd, we are having a big problem of police brutality targeting blacks, mainly blacks. So that brings about the issue of racial racially motivated police brutality, whereby blacks are being targeted. Now, again, they are bringing this narrative that uh, black people are the victims and police is racist. Blacks are being targeted, blacks are being killed based on their race and everything. However, before I proceed, let me put this on record. In every police department across the world, in every country, there are both good and bad cops. And what we should be working towards is eliminating the bad cops. That is what should be happening. Now, I've done my research. I've tried my best to find whether police in the US is racist. I've not found any. However, there's one thing that I've found out, that police in the United States, actually, there is no evidence. There is no evidence that police in the United States is racist. And there is also no evidence of systematic racism in the police departments in the United States. And let the facts speak for themselves. Whereas Black Lives Matter movement and global network and everything claim that blacks are being targeted and by police and mainly because of their race. Let's put this on record. In a case where police in a case of police killings of unarmed, I repeat, unarmed black people, there are only 9 cases in the past 1 year. So those are very few compared to what the Black Lives Matter movement wants you to believe. Secondly, when we talk about police shootings, which they claim black people are being targeted by police, black people are the main targets. I'm going to give you statistics from the past, from this year alone. We are just into the 6th month of 2020, and from the time this year started, the police killings or shootings which have led to the death of people point to 40% of those people being white. Those are 40% of the police shootings, and that's the highest percentage. They are white people. Then 20% of those shootings, just this year alone, are black people. Then 13.2% of the shootings are Hispanics. Then the other groups represent 26%. That is even more than the black people. So other groups, contribute more to the black people. When we go back to the past, 5 years, that is from 2017 to 2020, the police shootings which have resulted into death of people go like this. 48.8% of those people have been white, 19.3% of those people have been black, then 13.8% of those people have been Hispanics, and 18% of those people are from other groups. Now, what does this show? This completely, shows the lie that Black Lives Matter want you to believe, that black people are being targeted because of their race. And let's not forget, at least on average, the statistics are different. I tried to do my research, they are not coherent, but at least the percentage of crime being committed in the US, it's about 40 to 57 to even 60%. It's in that range, 40 to 57 or percent of the crime in the US is mainly from black communities. So black people contribute the highest percentage of crime. And when it comes to crime which is related, shootings, armed robbery, and other related cases where it requires armed suspects and criminals, black people contribute 57% to that crime. So despite contributing the largest percentage to the crime rates in the United States, black people are not the most. They are not being victimized the most. However, there are statistics which show that a black person is more likely to die from a police shootings 3 times more than a white person. Why is that so? It's because black people tend to engage more in crime than white people. So despite the fact that black people are engaging more in crime, they are more likely to die, but actually they don't die more like the white people. So this brings out the hypocrisy, the wrong narrative that the Black Lives Matter movement wants you to believe, and the facts speak for themselves. Like Ben Shapiro normally says, facts don't care about your feelings, and facts are facts. And facts show that white people die more from police shootings than black people. So that does not mean that black people are actually dying from police, and it doesn't mean that I'm downplaying the threat of black people being killed by police. But let's not spread this narrative based on race. The problem is police brutality and killings, not racially motivated police brutality and killing. Those are two different narratives, and this whole issue of Black Lives Matter wants you to believe the wrong narrative. However, I still believe that we need to, strongly condemn. We need to strongly fight the problem of police brutality and police killings, and we need to solve the real problem of police brutality. However, we also need to solve the real problem of crime, because if you want to one way of reducing police brutality and killings is to reduce on crime. So we need to go into those black communities. We need to change the society, and we need to, as black community leaders in the United States, they need to, you know, put all policies and programs available and possible to make sure that the crime rate in their communities reduces, because when you have higher crime rates, then you're going to have higher uh, possibilities of having police killings and shootings. And this problem, like I said, it needs to be addressed evenly. It's not a problem of black communities, it is a general problem. And the problem is police brutality and killings, and that's the problem we need to address, not racially motivated police brutality and killings, and making this whole case a problem of black people being targeted, being racially, victimized, which is not the case. And by deviating away from the real problem, we're actually not solving the problem. If you think that chanting police brutality and fighting police brutality against blacks, you're actually going to solve the problem of police brutality, then you're not. And you're going to be wasting your time for I don't know how many years, and you'll find yourself going back to the starting point. These the other issue that they bring up, which is racial profiling, mainly from police. Again, this brings me back to the issue of systematic racism in the police department. I've not seen any evidence whereby police is targeting black people, because racial profiling means police are targeting particular people based on their race to suspect them of them being criminals. I've not seen any evidence to that. And if it's there, because I believe there are some, like I said, there are good cops, there are bad cops. There are cops who are racist, there are cops who are not racist, and the minority of them are those who are racist. So those people, if they are there, and I know they are there, we need to deal with them, and reforms must be made to make sure we throw them out of the police, not only in the US but everywhere in the world. And however, we also need to accept the fact that areas which tend to have high crime rates are going to receive more policing compared to the other areas. So receiving more policing means that the police is going to handle those areas with the mindset that there is a lot of crime in this area. So that is not something which is racially motivated, but something which is motivated by the statistics and the nature of the area, because it has high crime rates. So police has to be more vigilant. It has to take more attention. And if it so happens, like it is, that that area is an area dominated by blacks, then that's not racial profiling. It is just reduce on your crime rates and you reduce policing in your area. It's that simple, instead of the stupid narrative that is being spread by the Black Lives Matter. So that is it. Then lastly, we're having an issue of racial inequality, which they are fronting for. I believe that's a genuine concern. There is racial inequality in our society, but the way it's being presented is actually the wrong way, which is making black people believe that the reason as to why they are facing all these problems is because of white people. Like I said, we are living in a competitive world, and the rules of the jungle, they never change. The rules of the jungle don't change. It's up to you to meet those rules and survive. So it's a big topic. I'm not going to delve so much into it, but I believe that's the best way of doing away with this racial inequality, which is being justified by statistics. It takes me back to the response I gave you of systematic racism. Change the society, change the society, and change the mentality of the people. Channel the energies of those people in your community to more positive energy, to more positive and meaningful ventures and issues. Then you're going to, trust me, you're going to be having a social transformation, and we are going to be having more, from the statistical point of view, a more equivalent, you know, uh, racial uh, racial equality. And thirdly, there was this issue, and this is the most important issue that I want to wind up with, the issue of all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. And I just wanted to even do, a a short video clip about it, but I just decided uh, to incorporate it into my podcast. Now, there's been a call for all lives matter, and it has rubbed the Black Lives Matter people the wrong way. And I've been following the conversation on Twitter and everything. People who are in so much support of Black Lives Matter seem so enraged by the All Lives Matter advocates. They think that by people calling for All Lives Matter, they are directly attacking Black Lives Matter, and they are directly shutting down their space of expression of Black Lives Matter. Now, let me put this on record. As a person, in my own opinion, I support All Lives Matter. I think it is a more meaningful, a more effective, and a more transformative uh, activism point of, you know, action, which can be more beneficial to our society compared to Black Lives Matter. First, why am I saying this? First and foremost, we are, you know, when we embrace All Lives Matter, we are bringing all people together. You know, we are we are not leaving out anyone. I've had uh, constructive and genuine arguments where people who are in for Black Lives Matter think that actually, I'm going to just give you their point of view. Actually, we are not against Black Lives Matter, but sorry, actually, we are not against All Lives Matter, but for now, the issues we are talking about are the issues affecting blacks. So we accept All Lives Matter, but in this case, Black Lives Matter because of what is happening against blacks. Like I said, that is that is a very good argument that is basing on stupid and incoherent arguments. Like I said, first and foremost, we accept the issues affecting black people are genuine. They are issues that need to be addressed in society. But if you think by if you think addressing them basing on, a racial basis and uh, on a racial preference, you're going to be solving the problem in society, you're actually hitting the wrong end. You're actually not solving the problem. If it's the problem of racism and you think you're going to solve racism with racial preference, you're not solving racism in society, and racism is going to exist. If you're solving violence against uh, people or against blacks, and you think the problem will go away when you tackle the issue of violence only against blacks, then you're not solving the problem. Even when you have a wrong mindset that black people are being targeted, most which is not the case, then you're not solving the problem, and you're going to come back to the starting point, and you find that the problem is still in society, and you find that the group you pretend to be concerned more about uh, is is going to benefit when actually find out it's not benefiting at all, then you're not solving the problem in society. So like I said, Black Lives Matter brings about genuine concerns, but I just want to stress this point: the issue of all lives matter is mainly coming up from a position of solvency. It's coming out from a solvency position. People in all lives matter, and I accept there are people who could be using the hashtag or the activism for their own bad or wrong motivations. But let's go with a more meaningful point of view, which is that people who are advocating for all lives matter are coming out from a solvency point of view. This is what they are saying to you, the people on Black Lives Matter movement. They're accepting your concerns which you're raising, and they are simply telling you, in order to solve these concerns which you claim affect black people most, even though in most cases they don't, the best way to solve them is to solve the problem and approach the problem in society as a whole, not basing on a racial preference or not basing on one particular group simply because you believe that it's the most threatened from your subjective point of view. So the issue of all lives matter, I just want to make this clear. It's not against Black Lives Matter. It's not against. It's not in for shutting you from expressing your concerns, but it's all about accepting, embracing, and joining you in the concerns you're raising against Black people, like we have already talked about here. This includes, like I said, it includes violence, it includes police brutality and killings, it includes discrimination, uh, racial inequality, name them. There are different, there are very many injustices which are genuine, but the only way to solve them is not basing on racial preference, but solving them throughout the society. And there are other groups which there is anti-Semitism. There are other groups like the Hispanics. There are Asians. There are even other groups which are not even racial groups. There are people like mothers who are also facing similar or related problems. There are there are there are issues of poverty which are also based on race, but not only affecting black people. There's an issue of refugees, and they face similar or related problems. There's gender-based violence which can also affect race, but not only affecting black people. There's sexual harassment. There are very many problems which can be brought up by the Black Lives Matter movement, but which can be solved without focusing on one particular race, but which can be solved as a whole in society. And that is what All Lives Matter is all about. So if you believe that those problems are need to be addressed from your group, then you need to join the interracial movement to solve them, such that we approach those problems as a whole from society and not basing on one particular gender. So this is my last message to everyone in Black Lives Matter movement. If you believe that the problem in your society has to be solved, simply because it's big, you know, simply because it's affecting you based on your race, then join the effort to approach the problem from all races, because you never know when it will affect your race most, or whether it's when it will stop affecting your race most. For that matter, all lives matter, and you need to join the efforts to approach all injustices from society. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye bye.